Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It's Wednesday, August 24th, 2022. Time for another show. Time for what is the last day of summer vacation for the public school students in this area, which means, of course, that we get back, finally, to our radical agenda of critical race theory and indoctrinating children with socialism starting tomorrow. I guess. I mean, that's the hellhole I thought we lived in, according to the news or something like the news. Anyway, I guess this all begins again tomorrow. All the socialist teachers will, of course, be forced to buy their own materials for the classroom because of all the rampant socialism. So we've got that going for us, which is nice. And I understand there's some other things going on in the area of education as well. So perhaps we'll catch up with those things. There are many other things happening in other areas of other things, which is what happens when it's what happens anyway. And when you do a news show of sorts, this is the sort of thing you will concern yourself with. So this is our task. Greg Dworkin has prepared a raft of stories for just that purpose. There are so many things happening, and Donald Trump continues to insist on inserting himself in often very stupid ways in those lists of stories, I guess. And he continues to generate more press coverage for himself, even though they are largely about his being, one, stupid, two, criminal, and then, I guess, three, stupidly criminal, in that he continues to plead his legal case or attempt to hire, parking lot attorneys, traffic court attorneys and the like, personal injury attorneys, to represent him in court with these ridiculous claims. And, there's just more of them every minute, so we can review all of those things as well. There's no shortage of stories to share, of course. And today being a Wednesday, that means yesterday was a Tuesday. That's the way the calendar works. And Tuesdays around this time, every 2 years or so, are primary days because everyone's running for Congress, and we have 50-some states and territories. Yes, there are some others and federal districts and the like, which have their own primaries going on. And there were more yesterday, and there were some special elections yesterday. And we love special things, so, we'll probably be catching up on those too. I see a lot of Twitter chatter this morning about a special election in, New York, let's say, just hypothetically, because it's the first state that comes to mind, and it's where the contest was held, of course. Special election there, and we'll get into it, I'm sure, with Greg, but a lot of chatter about positive results for Democrats in terms of their performance in these districts. In some places, pulling out outright victories. In other places, just simply outperforming the polls, which I guess is taken to be a victory of sorts. But in both places, some significant turnout, some very promising signs for Democrats getting people to the polls in a special election in the middle of the end of the summer. But holding out a lot of hope for Democratic performance come November, at least enough to make it something of a contest as opposed to the anticipated red wave, or rather, the Republican wave, because they are the out of power party in a midterm election, and that was the historical norm. But as it turns out, if you do things that are horribly unpopular and unsettle 50-plus years of settled law in the issue area of something as important as the personal bodily integrity of well over 50% of the electorate, you can expect some backlash. And I guess there has been some, which is what we expected, both as Democrats and as humans. And so it's lovely when that stuff kind of lines up that way. Greg Dworkin is here with, as I promised, that raft of stories, I think. I mean, he may have left it behind, but he's broadcasting from home, so shouldn't be hard to find at this point. Good morning, Greg. How you doing?
Good morning. Well, we're doing quite well because
Well, all
I
right.
like winning.
Yeah, well, everyone likes
I hate
that.
losing, but I like winning.
That's the mindset you want going into the contest.
It's true. So I'm going to take my time and sort of meander through New York State. I was born in Brooklyn. That's
Yes.
Kings County, by the way.
Oh,
And then I grew up in Westchester County, that is to say Yonkers, Westchester County. New York has 69 counties, and they're all different.
nice.
And so I'm going to paint a little bit of a mental picture for you so you can see what's going on here
All right.
and why New York 19 special election, along with the New York 23 special election, was so big, but 19 especially. So
big. It's huge.
take the letter T,
All right.
crossbar on top,
Yeah, I'm familiar.
post holding it up, and then put it on its side so that the crossbar of the T is to the east. And that's basically roughly the shape of New York State. Painting a mental picture here for those of you who don't have video on this podcast, which is to say everybody.
Right. So a T. All right. Well, I'd never heard that example, but all right. T.
All right. So at the bottom of the crossbar, all the way to the south, is New York City and Long Island.
Yes. Okay.
All right. And so, again, Kings County, Queens County, Richmond and the Bronx. And then just north of that is Westchester and Rockland.
All right. Yeah.
Counties people are familiar with. Once you get a little bit north of that, then you're talking about counties like Dutchess.
Ah, yeah.
Poughkeepsie is the county seat.
Okay.
Ulster, where Kingston is the county seat.
Right.
Sullivan County,
course.
Monticello.
Oh.
Okay, Delaware, Greene, Columbia,
sure?
Rensselaer, Schoharie. That's basically New York 19. It sort of excludes Albany and Rensselaer, so those cities are not in there. But Rensselaer County excludes Troy, I should say. So Albany and Troy are in Albany County, I believe. Troy's right on the border.
Albany should be.
So if you're looking north of New York City, it's Westchester, Putnam, Dutchess, Columbia, Rensselaer. Those are the counties that border on Connecticut. And they're really just across the border from me in about a 20-minute ride.
Well, all right.
Now, you have to remember that New York, unlike Connecticut, for example, which got rid of counties and basically governs through its 169 cities and towns, New York still has a county structure. So the county executive is a politician of note, has a budget, has an office, and often uses the county executive to run for higher office.
Okay. That would
Ulster, which is the biggest county in New York 19, with Kingston as the county seat, had a county executive by the name of Pat Ryan, a Democrat.
Okay.
The second largest county in New York 19, with Poughkeepsie as the county seat, is the county executive there is a Republican, and that particular Republican, I think his name is Mike Molinaro, was running against Ryan. And the assumption was that the executives would win their counties.
Okay.
And then the question is going to be by how much and what's the rest of what's going on here. Turns out Ulster County is the biggest at 39,000 votes. And it went for Pat Ryan, the Democrat, 62-38.
So that was what was expected, or that he would win anyway, yes.
Dutchess, the second biggest, where Mark Molinaro is the county executive, had 25,000 votes and went to the Republican Molinaro 52-48. So not quite as well.
All right.
And Columbia, the third largest county, went Democrat 61-39. That's 19,000 votes. All the other counties had less than 10,000 votes. And Pat Ryan wound up winning this election, the Democrat, by 52-48. Now, that was not expected.
Oh, well then, all right.
This is a relatively Republican-leaning area overall because, again, it's sort of rural. And it's a bellwether county because it does swing. It voted for
Yeah,
Obama.
very.
It voted for Trump by 7 the first time, and then voted Biden by 2 the last time in 2020. And so it turned out that Pat Ryan outperformed Biden in this county by about 2 points. Again, a string of about 4 different special elections where in each of them, the Democrat outperformed what Biden had done.
Okay.
Polling in this area had shown the Republican up by anywhere from 7 to 10 points or more.
I see. Well,
So people were expecting that, look, if Pat Ryan gets within 3, that would be considered a win. That would be considered an overperformance. He won by 4.
that's
Nobody
more.
was really expecting that. And so what happened is the next day, today,
That's now.
all of a sudden the pundits go from Bellwether State, Bellwether County, Bellwether Congressional District, watch closely, all eyes on this to don't make too much of specials. You can't really tell a lot from specials.
that
Specials
makes
don't
sense.
really tell you what's going on. Historically, Democrats are going to lose.
I see.
And most of those pundits are men.
Oh, well, is that the reason?
Well, they're completely discounting the fact that Pat Ryan ran the race, literally putting on his yard signs,
Yard signs. Everyone knows those work magic.
Roe is on the ballot. Big letters, tiny
All
little
right.
letters, Pat Ryan.
Okay.
Whereas the Republican,
Well,
very
then they went to look
interestingly,
to see whether Roe was on
ran
the ballot.
as, look, it's all about inflation and Joe Biden. And people would say, yeah, well, what about Roe? Your opponent is running on like Roe is a big deal. And he said, well, it's not that big a deal simply because this is New York State and we're good. And that's the way it is. And let's move on to talk about inflation. He lost. I mean that would
it's
be
a
the
strategy.
perfect Republican establishment response to try to downplay it.
He was very established.
Ask Virginians what Glenn Youngkin thinks about abortion.
All right.
Ask him now. Ask him before. And so if you're trying to pretend you're a centrist, what you do is you say, well, it's not really a big deal for one reason or another. And guess what? People weren't buying that in New York in that CD19. What happened is that the people coming out to the polls were juiced in the Democratic counties.
Juiced. Okay.
They came out higher.
Not Jews. Well, I mean, they may have been Jews, but
they
were
came out
juiced.
higher.
Okay.
I'm skipping over that one. Steve Kornacki writes in New York 19, turnout in Ulster County, the biggest and most Democratic county in the district and Ryan's home base, played a role in the Democrats' win. In 2020, it accounted for 26% of all votes cast, and tonight it was closer to 32.
All right.
So people were motivated to turn out. I mean, turnout is key, right?
Okay.
The cliche. It
Yeah,
is.
Well, yeah. I mean, is that even a cliche? That's
The
that's
poll
just
that
true.
counts is the one on Election Day. It was.
All
The
right.
guy with the most votes wins. He did. All those things happened.
This is
And
outrageous.
so, you know what? You could look at the polls and scratch your head a little bit and say, well, the polls said he was going to lose, but he won. And so that probably means something. If you're Nate Silver, you look at it and say, well, it looks like the environment has changed. If you're Politico, you say, oh, the environment has changed. Same thing for Punchbowl. So Politico this morning has driving the day, time to adjust your expectations for November. Now, longtime listeners of the show will know we've been saying that for weeks.
Yes.
And for weeks, Politico says, pundits have homed in, Homed, I think it's either way, you can use one, homed in on the special election in New York's 19th Congressional District as a national bellwether, seats a true toss-up, Obama, Trump, Biden, and the national parties responded, sending in huge sums of money. The race would offer a trial run, and Ryan defeats Molinaro. Not only that, he overperformed Biden in 2020. A win there by Democrats is the clearest evidence yet that the 2022 election is unlikely to turn out quite the way conventional wisdom imagined less than a year ago when Glenn Youngkin rode a wed way into the Virginia governor's mansion. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean the Dems will hold the House and Senate, nor does it mean Republicans will be in the minority. But Ryan's victory in the marginal swing district suggests Democrats have at least a chance of bucking both traditional midterm losses.
Yeah, buck those losses.
Right. It can be tempting to read too much into special election, wrote 3 males. David Tires, Gary Fineout, and Matt Dixon. They're not always predictive of results in the fall, and Republicans this year have overperformed in some places, too. They really haven't. They're talking about the South Texas House seat, but that happened before the Dobbs decision. Okay. So Dave Wasserman wrote, there's a lot of focus on Democrats being more engaged and energetic post-Dobbs, which is undeniably true. But to me, the GOP Trump base appears less engaged than it was last November, which is just as big a part of this story. So in other words, you step back and you say, what's really going on here is you thought, as Kyle Kondik wrote, you'd think, based on all the coverage, that maybe or how did he put it? One random thought. If the FBI Trump raid had really been this explosive political electoral development that fired up Republican voters, shouldn't Republicans have done better in the New York specials last night? Because there was another special, not quite as interesting, but interesting in its own right, and we'll get to that in a minute.
Okay.
And so he makes the point that it's not just that Democrats showed up and showed up big. It's that Republicans didn't.
No? Good.
Good.
Keep it that way.
That's what I say. Good.
Good. Yeah.
Okay. Or as the rude pundit put it, and don't worry about your
I've got it
sensor
ready.
bullhorn. Get it ready, but I don't think you'll need it.
Okay.
If I'm a Democratic strategist, I'm telling every candidate to unify around a pro-choice message and make that one of the central arguments in the campaign, and you're an effing idiot if you don't, except he didn't say effing.
Ah, all right. Well, I mean, he did, but he said the whole word.
Well, he did.
Right.
By the way, I'm totally available to be some candidate strategist. I can teach you a dozen ways to say F off to your opponent without using that phrase.
Yeah, excellent. Although, it's fine.
So he's got the point right.
Yeah. Well done there. I mean, that's a specialty.
Right. So
okay, so good job in,
New
what
York
was
State.
it? 12, District 12, was it?
District 19.
19, 8,
Right, now we're going to
7,
go up to 23rd. So again, New York
4,000.
State lying on its side is a T.
right? T.
With the
T.
crossbar
Yes.
to the east. And now we're going to go all the way to the west at the end.
West. All right, the bottom of the T.
The bottom of the T, which is on its side now, so it's all the way west. Southwest part of that
Right.
is CD 23. And by the way,
23.
the reason there was a special election
is
that the guy who was representing 19, Anthony Delgado, became the lieutenant governor.
Yes.
So that's why it was empty.
Good.
And then that district goes away. So they're not running against each other in the fall.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Right? The Democrat is going to be in 18 and the Republican will stay in 19. So it's not a head-to-head anymore. But that's what happened there, and that's why it was special.
Well, it
Now,
sounds special.
In CD 23,
23.
it was special because
So
Tom
special.
Reed, the Republican, had to step down because of a sex scandal.
Oh,
So it was an open seat.
well.
Okay.
Okay.
And in CD 23, it was a race.
It was. That's true.
Okay.
Good point.
Special. And there was a fellow
Also true, yeah.
named Sempolinski, Joseph Sempolinski, a Republican who was Tom Reed's staffer.
I see. All right.
It's a very conservative district,
Yeah,
rural,
right.
and he
Yeah.
wins that district, but not by much. He beats the Democrat, Max Della Pia, 53 to 47.
Okay.
And it was a very strong Trump area. So that, again, is an overperformance by the Democrat. Now, again, Sempolinski won't be running in the fall. He's just a caretaker because Reed had to step down. In the fall, there'll be a different race, and that'll be between a fellow named Nick Langworthy, who's the state Republican Party chairman,
All right.
and the Democrat who overperformed Della Pia
All right.
because he won his own primary.
Okay.
Nick Langworthy the Republican in the fall, ran against a fellow named Carl Palladino.
That rings a bell. Why is that?
He ran for governor once. He thought Hitler was fine and we could really use that kind of leadership in the United States. Just give me an idea.
Yeah.
Carl Palladino threatened to take out a reporter who was reporting on him. If you don't keep, away from me, I'm going to take you out right here and right now. Carl Palladino's an awful human being. So naturally, in the Republican primary, it was 52-48. He almost won.
Right.
But he didn't win. So
okay, well, that's
two significant things happened in CD23. In other words, the Democrat overperformed in the special against the Republican, and in the Republican primary for covering that area in the fall, Carl Palladino lost. So those are the significant things there.
Okay.
So there you have New York State. I'm speaking of the areas of New York. Again, I grew up in Brooklyn and Yonkers, New York. And so I come from the area where Mary, eat, drink, and be merry.
Oh, yes.
And the woman's name Mary.
Right.
And if you get hitched in a church, you get married. And so I come from that part of New York State where all three of those words are pronounced differently. And I've been telling you about the part of the state where they all sound the same.
Okay, in the 23rd?
Mary, Mary, and Mary. 23rd and 19th.
Okay. 19 as well. Okay. Oh, okay. Well, that explains.
So it's only a very small area that people say it correctly,
and that explains the election outcomes more so than say my.
Well, that's why everybody
points.
Where I come from call what I was describing to you as upstate New York.
Yeah.
Even though it's just a couple of miles north of New York City.
New York City, and then the whole rest of it is upstate New York, as far as I know. Okay. My reference point is New York 19 is Vassar College.
Yeah, exactly.
And New York 23
and New York 23
is Cornell.
is St. Bonaventure.
Oh, okay.
Where
I
Bob
went with
Lanier
Cornell
played.
and Ithaca. But okay. Yeah, sure. Why not? And if we can remember next time we'll be prepared with the mascot names on those. I just remember the
Bunnies.
Okay. But in Vassar, does anybody know that?
No.
I had to go and look it up. The Brewers. Well, it's a D3, so you don't get those
remember
names.
When they played in the NCAA.
Right. Well,
I'm blanking on it.
So there you go. That's the answer. Division 3, and so therefore you have no idea. And it's the Brewers, which I wouldn't have guessed.
Yeah. Well,
okay. There you go.
Maybe who knows? Maybe Vassar will move to Milwaukee. Who knows?
Right.
Other things happened in New York. New York 10th,
obviously. Yes.
Right, this 10th. Is Lower Manhattan and Brooklyn. Dan Goldman.
Okay.
I think he's from Goldman Sachs, really rich guy.
Yeesh.
Beat three progressives, Uline
so
New
fun.
and Mondaire Jones. But there was a 25-8, 23-7, 18-2. So that was sort of semi-interesting.
Yes.
And New York 12, perhaps a little bit more interesting, where Jerry Nadler was running against Carolyn Maloney. So you had two incumbents running against each other. And Nadler just smoked her. The West Side just outplayed the East, 55-24.
Well, Nadler, played very prominently in the impeachment. Maloney was doing a fantastic job with the Oversight Committee and conducting some really interesting hearings as well. So I guess tough choice in terms of guessing who got the most publicity out of all of those things. But I guess the scales really tipped toward Nadler on that one. He just had the premier committee when you're impeaching a president twice.
Right. So I got a question for you.
Yes.
So Eleanor Holmes Norton is the
DC.
delegate representing the District of Columbia.
Yes.
And she's actually and absolutely a delegate.
Yeah.
But I'm not totally sure of her status.
Okay.
Relative to other delegates.
Okay. You mean other delegates from territories like Guam?
No, I mean other delegates in terms of New York delegates and Connecticut delegates and such. Does she have all rights and privileges as everybody else?
Well, no.
The reason I'm asking
is
because since Carolyn Maloney lost and she headed the Oversight Committee,
yes,
Eleanor Holmes Norton is now the ranking member.
Aha. Well,
So if you have a ranking member from the district, and the district is a little different than the 50 states, what's that mean? That's my question to you.
In committee terms, nothing. Everything's normal, and she can do all the things that everybody else can do in the committees. It is in the House, on the floor, in votes where things are different for delegates. Usually under a Democratic majority, in the modern era, they very frequently adopt rules that permit the delegates to vote during this is really complicated, but during votes held while the House is sitting as the committee of the whole House. Is this going to be
one of those mace on the wall things?
Yeah, basically, while they're voting as the committee of the whole House, then the delegates get to vote. When they vote on final passage of a bill, basically the committee of the whole is the status that the House works in when they're debating and amending a bill. And then when it's finally all done and it's ready for final passage, they resolve themselves into the House of Representatives, at which point then the delegates don't get a vote. That's when you're talking about D.C. paying their taxes, paying taxation without representation. Actually still happens.
So if the Democrats hold the House,
yes,
Eleanor Holmes Norton might not be able to vote on final passage, even though she's the chair of the committee that sent the bill there.
Yes, that will happen.
I'm just saying, it's interesting.
Yeah, they really got to figure that out. But when Republicans dominate the House and they use their rules, they usually prohibit delegates from voting on the floor, even in the committee of the whole, which is really nasty and rotten, but that's because most of the delegates are Democrats. The end of that. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, the same guy who was just talking to you a second ago. Our Patreon subscription drive is still going strong, with over 175 monthly donors who help keep us on the air. If we've helped keep you going during the pandemic, why not return the favor and help us keep going so we can all be together for the next disaster? Patreon.com, Patreon.com, makes it easy to make secure, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. Maybe you'd like to thank us for keeping you sane during the Trump era. Maybe you're looking forward to in-depth explanations of what's going on in the Biden administration. Whatever it is that keeps you listening, we need your help to keep bringing it to you. And hey, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running with those options too. Thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We literally could not do this without you. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. I made it back to the seat in time. I had to race upstairs. It's the last day of summer vacation, and yet we have so much to do. So I had to wake the son up, the high schooler, for one last SAT review course for today. How fun to spend the last day of summer vacation on that.
Right. So in the special election at Casa Kagro X,
yes.
Unexpectedly, you got everybody up in time and on their way.
Well, it's not a done deal yet. I've said it's time to get up.
Well,
now the struggle begins.
Yes.
So, okay. Here we're having a special election here. Whether or not to get up is the question. Yeah,
I like to get up or I like to sleep through the alarm.
Yep.
So let's move on from New York, as much as we love New York, to perhaps, Florida.
Oh.
Now, I didn't
how's that
think,
shaped? Like
personally for me, I didn't think Florida was quite as interesting, although one of the interesting results we got, Alan Grayson was running to come back.
Really? Okay.
He lost.
Oh. All right.
And the fellow that won is a guy named Maxwell Frost, a Democrat. That's in the 10th district. And it's interesting because he's Afro-Cuban.
Huh.
And perhaps the future of the Democratic Party in Florida. He's only 14.
Huh. Well,
I think he's 25 or something. He would be the youngest congressman if he wins.
Okay. That's I think it's neutral.
So something to watch,
I guess that's good. Yeah. Okay,
I like,
that's fun.
I'm old and I like the future of the party.
Yeah, Maxwell
looking at stuff
Frost.
like
I
that.
might not have guessed the Cuban ancestry on that, but I guess, well, good. I'm glad to get the curveball every once in a while. I'm 25 years old. That's another good one. I'll take it.
I have
10. Florida 10.
check his exact age. I know he's young. His name is Maxwell Alejandro Frost,
There's the Cuban part, I guess.
right?
That's
And
the Frost
first
is
Gen Z
Afro.
candidate to win a congressional primary.
I
25
guess
years
that's
old.
true.
Could
Is
be
that
the first
Gen
Gen
Z?
Z member elected to Congress, so I think that's well worth discussing.
Right. You know,
And then, of
Congress
course,
is held
the other
in person,
thing,
right? I mean, it's not
is
Zoom.
Florida 11th in the Republican district there.
11. Okay.
Florida 11, better known as the Devil and Daniel Webster.
Better, you think?
The Devil, or otherwise
All right.
known as Laura Loomer,
Okay,
lost.
her I know. Yeah.
and Daniel Webster won. Webster is
Okay.
a conventional Republican. He got 51% of the vote, and Laura Loomer got 44. Interestingly, Sumter County, that's the villages, or most of the villages. The villages
oh.
are so big, the retirement community in Florida.
Yeah.
I think it actually stretches into neighboring Lake County. But most of it's in Sumter.
Probably.
Armando would
Sumter.
know. He's from Florida.
Okay.
Laura Loomer won the villages where she campaigned heavily, 50 to 45.
That's,
Which tells you a little bit about the fact that Loomer campaigned in Sumter County, but it tells you a lot about the villages
yeah.
because they're all nuts, and they voted for the devil.
Did she chain herself to anything?
After she lost, she said, this is ridiculous. I'm not conceding, fraud. And so perhaps
Fraud.
she chained herself to the TV station. I don't know. But the other counties, Lake County, Webster won 50-45, and Orange County 60-34, that's closer to Orlando. And then in the South Polk County, Little Polk County, 47-46 for Daniel Webster. So Orange County was the big one, and Lake County, and Webster won those, and that's how he won his race. But the fact that nutcase Laura Loomer got 44% of the Republican vote in this district is scary.
Yeah.
She's crazy.
And
She's
she's-
as crazy as Palladino. And Palladino
worse.
also did well. So, keep that in mind. And yeah, you better believe the subtext, the big letters in the Democratic yard signs are going to say Roe is on the ballot. And then the smaller letters are going to say, also, by the way, this Republican Party is extreme and nuts.
Yes.
And so if you want freedom, vote for us. And then in tiny letters, it's going to be the name of whoever's running on the Democratic side.
All right. So that's what it can say. Roe's on the ballot, and Laura Loomer has chained herself to the ballot.
Yeah, Roe's on the ballot and Laura Loomer is not.
Yeah, but she
But she
says
wanted
she
to
is.
be.
She thinks she is. She's So I understood that the worst possible outcome in terms of the vote counting and Laura Loomer both in the same room. That she, I guess, some early count came in that was heavily from the part of the district that favored her, and she
Yeah,
was
it came from the
leading
villages. The villages
early
report
on.
first because everybody
Okay.
shows up at 8 a.m.
Right, because it's dinner time.
Because
And,
they can't sleep. They're
yeah.
old. They go to bed at 9:30 and they get up at 5:30 and they all go out and vote. And by 9:30, you know who won.
Right. So it's all over. And she was leading in the vote counting, but it was only, some partial count. And then the rest of the district came in as expected. And then she was no longer winning. So obviously, you know what that means. That's how you get to the fraud accusations. And you don't even need that to happen to make your fraud accusations these days.
And it was funny watching that in real time because while that was going on, the pundits were saying, well, you have to understand there's a bit of a mirage here because Sumter and the villages come in first and then the rest of the district, and then we'll see what happens. Oh, look, Orange County and the rest of the district is voting for Daniel Webster, not the devil. And so, yada, yada, yada. They were saying the same thing in New York 19. Well, there's a mirage here because the early vote comes in first, and the early vote is all going to be Democratic, and so he's winning 75-25, and that's not what's going to happen. And then by the time it was over, as well, oh, that guy won.
All right. So as Republicans would define it, fraud in both cases.
Exactly.
All right. So widespread fraud everywhere. 2 different states, completely different systems of everything, totally different people running, totally different people voting, but fraud everywhere. Just
but
can't
again,
escape it.
To me, you step back and look at the bigger picture, and I think that we learned a lot last night. Things we already knew, but they got emphasized, and I think that's important. First of all, male pundits are underestimating how ticked off women are. They're mad as hell, and they're not going to take this anymore, and they are turning out. And every excuse that the pundits come up with, well, why it might be a mirage that the Democrats are really all that riled up, and especially women, then you get these results. And you go, well, okay, we missed that one. But don't forget in the fall, traditionally what happens is Democrats lose. So don't keep that in mind. Don't lose sight of that. And they don't know. They really don't know. They're flummoxed because this is not a normal year and this is not a normal election for all the reasons we've talked about on the show for weeks, including the fact that right now Democrats are running against the Supreme Court. And so, and Trump is not on the ballot. He is on the ballot for Democrats, but he isn't for Republicans. That means Democrats are keyed up, juiced up. They want to come out and vote against Trump, and they want to vote against the Supreme Court. And Republicans say, oh, it's not really on the ballot, so, Trump isn't motivating us. Well, that's bad
All right.
for them if Trump isn't motivating them, because that's typically what motivates them.
Yeah.
And that's how Laura Loomer lost, and that's how Cara Palladino lost. They weren't motivated.
Okay. Well, I feel, very good about that.
I feel very good about all of that. And so
I'm fine with
for
it.
Democrats, there is, in fact, a reasonable chance, a very reasonable chance we'll do fine in the fall. We don't know that yet, of course, but we have to check that out and see. And the idea that it's a preordained loss for us is just wrong. Nobody can guarantee that the Democrats will win. It's just a more normal playing field than it was. That's all.
All right.
Okay. So last night, Nate Silver tweets a 2020 type performance. And he's looking at the special election in New York in Congressional District 23, where Sempolinsky got beat Della Pia, but not by much. Nate Silver writes, a 2020 type performance is not a particularly high bar to clear for Democrats who had a okay year in races for Congress. Like in 2020, the Democrats held serve in the House, but it wasn't overwhelmingly for them. And Nate Silver says it would be enough for them to be clear favorites in the Senate if they repeated 2020 and maybe add a seat or two. And the House would be at least a toss-up, probably lean D.
Okay.
Now, he goes on to say the safe bet is the environment regresses for Democrats by November because that's what's happened in the past. But then he goes on to say, but the environment has been pretty 2020-like so far post-Dobbs. Or post-Roe, if you prefer, whatever it is, that makes you remember that the Supreme Court took rights away from people. This is not a normal election. And even the Nate Silvers of the world, who look back and say, yes, but historically this and that and everything else. So how many points in the generic ballot do the Ds have to be ahead in order to win? Probably 3 or 4. They're about tied or maybe behind by 1 or 2 right now. But that's a big difference from a couple of months ago when they were down by 10, by 17, by lots. And all the movement has been toward Democrats. So the argument people are having now is, okay, well, how much more movement can there be between now and November when typically it moves to the out party? That is to say, the Republicans. And the answer is they don't know, because it's just impossible to compare this to any other time. So that's where we stand.
All right.
And at the same time,
here we are.
The pundits are just terrible at this. And you could see them trying to shift, as I said at the very outset, from CD19 in New York, just north of Westchester County, is a bellwether. It means everything. It's the perfect place to look. It was Obama, Trump, Biden. This is where we're going to see whether or not the Democrat who's running on abortion rights against the Republican who's running on inflation is the purest way to figure out what the environment is, and everybody should look, then the Democrat wins unexpectedly. And today it's, well, you can't make too much of special elections. Everybody knows that, they're special. And so, that's not going to tell you what's going to happen in the fall. Well, that's not what you said yesterday and the day before that and the day before that. So watching the pundits shift gears and try to, humma that is just really interesting.
Okay. Well, that's their job, and they're just not doing very good at it.
Well, that's their job, and they're not very good at it. Again, our previous studies have shown that the pundits, the savvy people, are right about 50% of the time.
Okay. Yes. Well, that's about what you would expect at random. I guess. I mean, it might be.
That's about right.
You want you want to expect better from pundits. I suppose you're supposed to be a pundit because you're better than 50-50, but maybe you're just not.
Right.
Okay.
So Ron Brownstein writes, as discussed here, multiple data sources show that voters without a college degree consistently make up about 3 to 4 percentage points more of the electorate in a midterm than in a presidential election.
Okay.
So that's in regard to a point that the GOP's added more voters to the coalition who are traditionally hard to turn out. And the Democrats have added voters to their coalition, college-educated voters, who vote more frequently. So at least in midterms, where you want reliable voters, the best thing you could do is try to get older, college-educated people on your side.
All right.
Because those are the ones who vote.
Yes.
Right? Ideally, you'd have 65 plus who went to college or advanced degrees as your coalition. And they'd be numerically greater than the other coalition because your voters will show up.
Right. Well, that's why it's good to have identified
with Trump not being on the ballot. Again, all those observations Trump about the GOP doesn't seem to be as motivated might in fact turn out to be true.
Okay. Well, Trump not on it and Roe on it. That's okay.
So, again, this is all good news for what we expect to happen in the fall.
Yes, and John McCain. Right. Well, that's why it's important to identify your congressional districts by what colleges and universities are homes there. Right?
Well, because if it's a conservative university, you have a pretty good idea it's going to be a conservative district.
I guess so.
So that's why, I don't think St. Bonaventure is going to be at the forefront of abortion rights.
Probably not. And
I'm just guessing.
Why, for instance, there's, I think virtually no colleges and universities somehow in Florida's 11th district, and that explains the results there as well.
Yeah. So which college is in the villages? I forget.
Yes, right. Nothing. Well, obviously, but there's adult learning centers and lots of let's say Pilates and prancercise.
Right. So again, a lot of things happen under the radar. I think not really talked about a lot are Uvalde and the fact that if mothers are going to come out and vote, and women are going to come out and vote. They're going to vote on Roe, on Dobbs, but they're also going to vote on Uvalde. Yeah. And none of those, neither of those is going to be particularly good for Republicans.
Right. Well, it doesn't make them look good. And also the door manufacturers are going to be against you now. With
right. Now, I should, for the record, say, by the way, Charlie Crist is going to be the Democratic gubernatorial candidate against Ron DeSantis. And I expect DeSantis to win, although I have to say he's really trying to lose. The way he's trying to lose is he did a Mike Dukakis-style Mike in the Tank commercial where Ron DeSantis plays Top Gun and he looks like a doofus.
I mean, he barely got that melon in that helmet. That was crazy looking.
It was a crazy commercial. I don't know what the heck he's doing. But nonetheless, it's DeSantis is still heavily favored. He's got an enormous war chest, and Florida is
an enormous
Florida.
head. So, all right. Well, in all likelihood, sure. So, Charlie Crist, I mean, he's run for governor before, so he's got that going for him. But
he does. But there's going to be a fan scandal.
Yeah, right.
Charlie Crist demands that there's a fan under the podium blowing on him because
I remember then that was an item, like a news story.
And I won't do
the
debate unless I have my fan.
Right. There's actual fascism in the offing here in the gubernatorial race, but Remember when it was a fan that made the difference?
Right.
Oh, boy.
So remember, fans of Charlie Crist are diminutive but important.
I did happen to see another result in Florida, in terms of pure interest, like, I guess I'll watch this train wreck. Matt Gaetz won, obviously, his primary. He was renominated. They love him there, despite the fact that he's, implicated in underage sex trafficking. But Rebecca Jones, I guess, is going to be his Democratic opponent.
Rebecca with a K.
Yeah. But the former data scientist for the state who was allegedly fired trying, as she told it, trying to tell the truth about what was happening with COVID in Florida. And it's not exactly
not
the first choice of person to put up for candidate anywhere. But if there's anybody who deserves her as an opponent in Florida, it would be Matt Gaetz. So that should be pretty interesting. And if you happen to live in that area and you have a television, first of all, you could be mayor. But second of all, you might watch the news and find out what's going on. And then for the rest of you there in the Panhandle, you can all go over to that guy's trailer for the television and watch there.
Right.
Okay.
So, Ron Klain points out today, White House Chief of Staff, that congratulations to Representative-elect Pat Ryan.
Okay.
19.
That's
by the way, we have a $3 billion package of weapons and equipment for Ukraine. Gas prices are down for the 71st consecutive day, and the president will be back at the White House with some news, and that's undoubtedly about student loans today.
Oh, okay. You can use your student loan money to fill your tank.
Yeah.
Apparently. Yeah,
for
right.
A day.
So I paid $3.15 the other day, by the way.
Yeah. Look, gas prices are absolutely positively down. And so when you try to run against the Democrats based on gas prices, which is essentially what the guy in CD19 tried to do, Molinaro, against Pat Ryan, you're going to lose because gas prices aren't that bad.
Yeah.
Housing
a couple
prices
years
are
ago,
up. Food prices are up.
Right.
Inflation is still an issue.
Yes.
Don't get me wrong.
Right.
But there's other issues, and that's not the only one.
Okay. Right. There's something else on the ballot. I forget what it was.
I think Roe is on the ballot.
That could be it. And a great name to be on the ballot for yard signs. 3 letters. Can you imagine if the case had been like Rostenkowski or something?
Yep.
How would you get that on the sign? All right. That's
very
valid.
If you really want to know what's going on, of course, you have to
make.
wait for a Trafalgar poll. They're the new Rasmussen poll. They're the ones that are like 5 points in favor of the Republicans. Things are so bad for Oz in Pennsylvania that even the latest Trafalgar poll couldn't put Oz in the lead.
Well, that's because they polled in Pennsylvania, and he's from New Jersey, and that's the problem.
That's really the problem there. They should have polled New Jersey, and then we'd have a much better idea what's going on.
Yes.
Fetterman is just running an outstanding campaign.
Yes. Well, he was cut out for this.
Well, and Oz
and you couldn't have handed him a better opponent. Really, exactly.
It's just awful.
Nothing could have been better. For a candidate like Fetterman running on the authenticity card, to send him a carpetbagger TV doctor. What's faker than that?
Right.
So, all right, cool, good. On to November.
All right. I put a whole bunch of other things aside here.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I'm really all that interested in them.
That's why they're put aside.
Primaries are pretty good.
All right.
But
fair
I
assessment.
will do this because this has been in the news.
Yes.
And this is Clint Watts.
Yes. Why do I know Clint Watts?
I guess
drummer for the Rolling Stones.
No. He's a national security guy.
Ah, okay. Right.
And
dead, by the way, Charlie Watts. But okay.
Yeah. No. So Clint Watts talked a little bit here about that car bomb assassination in Russia. About significant assassination inside Russia.
Yes.
Where the daughter of a prominent Putin supporter was killed in a Moscow car bomb attack.
Yes, right. Okay. He did mention that Monday. Dugin. Yeah. Dugin.
Worried about mobilization to violence and reaction. Yeah. But I'd also note during events of heightened political tension, foreign adversaries like to make provocations.
Yes.
So he had said that earlier. So consider. The story insinuates that a Ukraine connection pulled off sophisticated bombing deep inside Russia to eliminate a purveyor of Kremlin disinformation, motivating Russians to support the invasion. And maybe it's true, but it fails the logic test on several fronts. For example, this assumes this assumes that Ukraine has the ability to set up and detonate complex device in Moscow and wants to send a message by striking deep in the heart of Russia. And if they had that ability and wanted to send a message, why would they pick that as a target?
Well,
Like, even if it were meant for the father and not the daughter, as people speculate.
He's just not a big enough...
Killing an ideologue leads him to being replaced by another ideologue saying the same thing. So while he's an important messenger for linking global far-right movements from Europe to North America, he's not that important inside Russia. So there would seem to be many more important targets for Russia, for Ukraine inside Russia, for them to have picked.
So generals,
Yeah.
The people they've been targeting the whole time, legitimate targets, for instance.
Ukraine's been very good about selecting targets of military significance inside Russia, like Crimea, unless it's just about hitting an accessible target. But why would they not hit a target inside Russia that matters militarily or matters more to Russians? Also, attacking an ideologue has the inverse effect if Ukraine wants to demoralize Russia. And lastly, all the Kremlin propagandists quickly pointed at, and immediately, Ukraine, which is what Putin would want the world and Russians in particular to believe, which leads to scenario two. Putin tried to kill off this guy.
Yeah.
Putin facing the inevitability of waging a blundered military campaign for 6 months now, troop ammo, equipment shortages, domestic disinformation can't hide the facts now. So despite the polls, subsurface evidence of concern amongst trolls and propagandists, in particular, Dugin was one of them. Last year, Dugin started chirping in ways that could be seen as anti-Putin. Like he said, the inevitability of a catastrophe coming. Russia elite's going to have their own given to them because they don't see what's going on here, said Dugin a year ago. So that was considered to be a dangerous populist streak. And who has history of killing off dissenters in Moscow with targeted assassination, bombs, bullets, balconies?
Yeah, that's more likely.
I think another anti-Putin guy in D.C. just fell out a window yesterday.
Oh?
I have to dig that one up. So it seems more likely the Kremlin, who has a long history of these things, follow the trail of dead Russians kind of thing.
Yeah.
So the issue is for journalists that write about the assassination, offering Ukraine as the culprit, as the only possibility without, doing the fact that maybe it's an inside job until facts are known, if they ever can be, might be actually helping Putin write the narrative for his favor.
Okay.
So just keep that in mind when you see reporting on it and you read reporting on it. It's not conspiracy theory to say there might be another explanation. We don't know that was the case, but don't just write it as if you know what's going on, because if it's happening inside Russia, you don't know what's going on.
Yeah, that would be very difficult to I don't know how Clint knows, but I guess he's made a study of it.
Well, it used to be his job. Knowing those things.
Well, okay then. Send me along. Was it a Twitter thread we were reading, or? Yeah. Okay.
So I'll have that. And I'll send it to you.
Up, and I'll provide that for people to mull over at their leisure. We'll say.
And that brings us to the end of the hour.
Well, okay.
So remember, pundits don't know what they're talking about,
right?
Including and especially me, but everybody else too.
Right. That's why we take other pundits. It's
still
no better choice, but
remember this, because polls clearly say Americans want Trump charged for a crime. So that's good for John McCain.
Yeah, that's right. It is. It would have been. And I guess they can take some solace in that. But he should be charged, and we would have been right to do it. If only he had lived to see the day.
If only.
I don't know. That
Alrighty, take care, and we'll be back tomorrow. And maybe we'll go over CD19 again, special election in New York, just because it's so much fun.
Yeah, right. And why not spend the whole day on it? Yeah, tomorrow will also have its own complications, with it being the first day of school on a new schedule, pushed back. They very helpfully put the bus departure time right smack at the beginning of the show. So there's some chance that the show will be, hey, good morning everybody, how you doing? Oh my God, hold on a second, everybody.
I was sort of used to the fact that you'd say, wait a minute, I have to take 45 seconds to walk my kid to school. I'll be right back, and then here you are.
Yeah, And, well, we've been doing this for years, and now the story is, I have to send my kid out the door for senior year of high school. We're walking him to first grade only moments
this
ago.
Story just crossed the transom, if you want a 1 minute lightning thing before the break. Tucker Carlson and other right-wing media figures have embraced a surprising new cause, the right of an Amish farm suspected of causing a fatal listeria poisoning to ignore federal food regulations.
Okay. That is interesting.
Government is terrible, so even when they try to save your life, it's terrible.
Right, and so therefore, so's technology, and let's get rid of it. That's interesting. All right, well, the Amish don't support television, so it's a one-way street.
Well, Louis Pasteur is French, so, why should we go with him?
Well, look, it's about rights, and what did we have?
RITES?
Yes, Amish rights. And what disease did they give somebody?
Listeria.
Listeria?
Yeah.
All right. That's got rights
folks,
too.
Raw milk isn't necessarily the best thing in the world for you. You used to get tuberculosis, but I guess you got listeria too.
Okay. Well, I understand that you can kill most listeria with Clorox wipes, so just strain your milk through one of those and you should be good. Probably not great medical advice, but yeah, actually raw milk has been a thing for conservatives for a long time, but then, if you watch enough TikTok, they're drinking all kinds of things, these weirdos. So, look, I like the Amish as much as anybody else. I won't let Tucker Carlson's dabbling in it ruin the
raw milk. No vaccines. It's all part and parcel of they're trying to kill us all off.
I guess so. But at least when the Amish do it, they more or less stick to themselves. Hard to get diseases from the Amish without going out of your way to do it.
Well, they have to walk it over to you.
Right, exactly. And so, they tend to keep these pandemics under better control in the Amish community. They may be rampant through the Amish community. They just won't come to you and give it to you.
All righty. Take care, and
I'll
talk to you tomorrow.
Okay, thanks a lot, and thanks for hanging in there. We wrap things up. We're a little bit behind on the music, but we'll jump out. Price of gas, apparently not a big deal in Amish country either, so they needed another issue. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Whew! Once again, just made it back to the seat. Well, actually a couple of seconds late, but a run up and down a couple flights of stairs to make sure everything is on the up and up. Everything's good. And class has begun, so that's good news. All right, time for us to jump into our pocket for the day and hit the other stories that were waiting in the wings. Let's see. To update us on where we are, let's see. Shall we go? I'm trying to decide whether we go back to the latest analysis of something we discussed extensively yesterday, the Trump motion filed in Florida District Court to upend, I guess, the search warrant in the ongoing investigation of Trump's possession of national security information. The New York Times offering still more analysis on that. Or, let's see, somewhat more interesting, other developments in the investigation front. Let's take a look. I mean, I kind of want to stay on top of this stuff. And some of the issues swirling around Trump's attempt to attack the basis of the warrant are interesting. The New York Times, via, let's see, who's on this one? Alan Feuer, F-E-U-E-R. We have judge in Trump search case issues written order seeking redactions. That's the magistrate judge. So we have an actual answer on what's going to happen with the affidavit, at least from the magistrate judge at this point. And is that, well, let's see, did they take it to they did go right back to the magistrate for this one. The motion that he's filed to, I'm trying, oh yes, right, with the request for the special master. It escaped my mind because, again, I mean, a lot of what we discussed yesterday is that the special master is kind of not really something that you would use in this sort of case. It's it's unusual in the first place. We've seen it lately, like I said, in the case of the search and seizure of communications devices from and written material from Rudy Giuliani's office, where they needed somebody, that wouldn't occupy the court's time, the district judge's time, sorting through all of the documents and separating out that which was privileged for various reasons. And so the special master drew that task. Special masters, there are some definitions of the sorts of cases that they take and circumstances in which they will be appointed, and that's one of them. But I don't know if I know the full breadth of things that you can appoint special masters for. I've seen special masters appointed actually by the Supreme Court occasionally when they're sorting out cases in which states, like the state government, states are suing one another. As I recall, there was a special master overseeing the case between New York and New Jersey, with the issue and controversy being, sovereignty over control of Liberty Island and the Ellis Island exhibits in the Hudson River between the two states. And there was some question about who was responsible for what and which island belonged to which one. And a special master at that point was, as I recall, brought in to oversee the resolution of that case, which would have nothing to do with the situation in which they're using special masters now, and of course have nothing at all to do with the situation for which Trump seeks a special master. But by the way, that case, that request for the special master, as Marcy's article pointed out yesterday, filed before a completely different judge. It's in the Southern District of Florida, and it's a federal district judge, and a Trump-appointed judge at that. And I think they did a little bit of forum shopping, because I think they filed not in Palm Beach County, but somewhere else, so that they could get a Trump-appointed judge, and the judge is not particularly happy about that. But just so that we know, it's not Bruce Reinhart who will be ruling on the special master question. Just to keep all of that straight. Anyway, Alan Feuer writing about the magistrate's consideration of the question of releasing the affidavit that underlay the issuance of his search warrant for Pervalago. The judge I've mixed the two words together. The judge in the Trump search case issues written order seeking redactions. The order was made on the same day the former president's lawyers asked another judge, the other one over there, to appoint an independent special master to review the material seized in the search. So this is where we stand in the Southern District of Florida proceedings. The federal magistrate judge in Florida, who signed the warrant authorizing the search of Trump's private club and residence, Pervalago, issued a formal order on Monday directing the government to propose redactions to the sealed affidavit and to justify the search, saying that he remained inclined to make portions of it public. Okay, I think we got the general gist of that. But now I can't remember exactly what made me decide to set this whole article aside for this. But the judge, or rather magistrate, Bruce Reinhart, repeated in his order the note of caution he struck in court last week. The government, he added, could still persuade him to keep the whole affidavit sealed. All right, so he hasn't actually ruled. I see. And an extensively redacted version might result in what he described as a meaningless disclosure. How so? Let's see. Hours after Judge Reinhart issued the orders, lawyers for Mr. Trump filed a motion asking another federal judge in Florida, one whom Mr. Trump named to the bench, to appoint an independent arbiter known as a special master to review the documents seized during the search for any that fell outside the scope of the warrant or that were protected by executive privilege or attorney-client privilege. The motion, which was filled with bombastic complaints about the search, for instance, the government has long treated President Donald J. Trump unfairly, it said at one point. It also asked the Justice Department to provide an informative receipt of what was taken from Mar-a-Lago. His lawyers wrote that the inventory left at the property by the agents who conducted the search was legally deficient and did little to identify the seized material, and that's because the seized material was largely classified. But that wasn't why they seized it. but it happened to also be the case. If the judge who received the motion, Eileen M. Cannon, appoints a special master in the case, it would be a big surprise because we wouldn't know what this special master would do, but it would almost certainly drag out the process of reviewing the multiple boxes of documents that were seized and slow down the government's investigation into whether Trump obstructed a federal inquiry and wrongfully detained national security documents. Retained, but I'll say detained. Anyway, special masters were appointed in other high-profile searches involving Trump, including the one conducted in 2018 at the office of Michael Cohen, the former president's longtime personal lawyer. In the Cohen case, I had forgotten about that one, lawyers for Trump and Cohen were moved quickly to request a special master. This time it took Trump's legal team 2 weeks to ask for an independent review. The department is aware of this evening's motion. By the way, maybe I'm wrong. Am I wrong about there being a special master in the Giuliani seizure? Maybe I'm thinking of the Cohen seizure and not the Giuliani seizure. But at any rate, certainly seems like Giuliani has had a seizure. Anyway, the department is aware of this evening's motion, said Anthony Coley, spokesperson for the Justice Department. They'll file a response in court. Reinhart's order earlier in the day effectively put in writing a ruling he made from the bench last Thursday after arguments from news media companies that wanted the entire affidavit unsealed and federal prosecutors who wanted to keep it fully under wraps. In both his written order and his oral ruling, Reinhart instructed the Justice Department to file a redacted version of the affidavit under seal by this Thursday, that would be last Thursday at noon, accompanied by a memo explaining its justifications. We knew this. In his order, Reinhart acknowledged that it was a foundational principle of American law that judicial proceedings should be open to the public, but offered 3 reasons for keeping much of the affidavit under seal, including some that were never fully explored at the hearing last week. He said there was a significant likelihood that releasing the full affidavit could harm the safety of witnesses who helped the government's investigation, leading to witness intimidation or retaliation. Given the public notoriety and controversy about this search, it is likely that even witnesses who are not expressly named in the affidavit would be quickly and broadly identified over social media and other communications channels, which could lead to them being harassed and intimidated. And that's kind of a bad thing. All right. Well, I'm not seeing maybe there was a tweet that indicated that there was something particularly interesting in here. I guess maybe we'll get down to where Trump's lawyers make their motion and complain a little bit more. We covered that pretty closely yesterday in reading the Twitter thread about it. Beyond requesting the special master, the motion attacked the search, saying the warrant was overbroad and what amounted to a possible violation of the Fourth Amendment. But while the motion suggested that there were well-established bases to suppress the warrant, Trump's lawyers did not go so far as to ask Judge Cannon to suppress it. So then I guess you're probably not going to be awarded that relief. That's unlikely to happen. All right. Well, I think that's, I don't know that advanced the ball all that much, but for whatever reason, I thought that was important to cover, but I didn't leave myself any note as to exactly why. All right. Let's see. Oh, well, also in this, maybe this was it, was meant to lead me to this. Ryan Goodman, former special counsel to Department of Defense and co-editor-in-chief of Just Security, offered various comments on this as well, at least that situation. Now having access to the National Archives letter to Trump's attorneys from May 10th, 2022. He says, first, note what's missing from the exchanges. Any claim by Trump's side that he'd declassified the materials. Interesting. And I guess he writes it all up at over at Just Security. He has the full text of the letter that's over at Just Security, but I think it's his analysis we're interested in here. The letter was published by John Solomon, who I'm sure thought he was doing Trump some real good here, but instead has stepped on another rake. All of this nonsense about, oh my God, the whole thing's a hoax and inapposite anyway, as I declassified all those things, as Kash Patel says. I saw him declassify all these things. There's no mention of declassification until they get to the search warrant stage. in all of the supposed cooperation stage where the government is coming with a request and then a meeting and then a subpoena and then finally the search warrant. At no point did they ever say anything about, hey, you don't need these things because they've been declassified anyway. And that might be either because they didn't think of that until, they made it up later. Didn't you declassify them? And even if you didn't, couldn't you declassify them now? Or rather, couldn't I say that you declassified them at the time? And wouldn't that be enough? And then they figured out, oh yeah, right, declassification doesn't actually matter and all this. So Ryan goes on to say, the letter confirms Trump was told by NARA, the National Archives and Records Administration, that the first batch of materials contained over 100 documents with classification markings comprising more than 700 pages. Some included the highest levels of classification, including this new thing that we've learned about, Special Access Program, or SAP, materials. The letter is a slam dunk on executive privilege, Ryan says, citing on-point Supreme Court decisions like Nixon versus GSA. The Office of Legal Counsel and NARA both explained there was no legal basis whatsoever for Trump. Plus, President Biden defers to my determination with OLC on executive privilege. So, not likely going to work for you. Once again, exercising executive privilege when you're not the executive, a dicey proposition at best, let's say. Also, note what's happening in these exchanges. Ryan points out Trump's side is blocking or trying to slow the National Archives' handling of the January 2022 materials to DOJ and the intelligence community so that they can conduct an assessment and take steps to mitigate the harms from the mishandling of the info. So, at this stage, right, the government's chief concern, it says, is not so much in prosecuting Trump for what he did, but mitigating the damage that he may have caused by retaining these materials. So they need access to it immediately. So the first thing that Trump does is, let's make sure to prolong the situation and cause more damage inside the intelligence community by making it harder for the Justice Department and intelligence community to assess that damage based on the content of the documents. Now, next up, a critically important point, as Ryan says, DOJ NSD to Trump. I don't know what DOJ National Security Director, both, I guess, teaming up in communications to Trump on April 29th, quoted twice in the letter. Urgent need to conduct an assessment of the potential damage resulting from the apparent manner in which these materials were stored and transported and take any necessary remedial steps. Why so critically important? As a former White House lawyer tells me, this damage assessment and remedial steps could mean suspending covert action programs, removing or moving around sources, and more. In other words, like more what do they call them? Extrications. I think there's probably a different word for it. Exfiltration, I suppose, of live intelligence assets because their identities may have been compromised. Just great. He's constantly doing this. And then lastly, this also goes to the heart of the Espionage Act. In April, the DOJ National Security Division, that's the NSD, I guess, DOJ NSD from before their letter of April 29th. So, in April, the National Security Division is clearly informing Trump of potential massive national security implications in his having kept the materials. Trump proceeds to willfully retain 150 more classified documents. Well, that's a problem. A violation, if you remember, of 18 U.S. Code 793, the Espionage Act. All very interesting developments in looking through the paperwork that went back and forth between Trump and Trump attorneys and the Department of Justice in trying to get all these papers back. This is all the supposed cooperation that Trump's lawyers keep citing. All right, let's see. Over in Rolling Stone, they have a slightly different angle on things. Let's see if they've paywalled it between last night and today. No, I think we can go ahead. Oh, no, there it is. Up jumps the paywall. So we go back to the pocket version of it here. It is, if I am not mistaken, Aswin Subsang and Adam Rawnsley together on the headline, the byline for Rolling Stone. Trump tells his lawyers, get, quote, my top secret documents back. Let's get them back. They're mine. And that's, the basic problem of perception that Trump has, which is what's getting him in legal trouble here. He continues to think of these documents as his personally, and they never were. And he just, I don't know whether it's willful misunderstanding or just simply he just doesn't have the cognitive skills to understand that they're supposed to be. I think his brain rises to the level of understanding those sorts of theoretical difference. I was the president, therefore all of the presidency's powers are inherent in me, and I take them with me when I leave. There's no difference between in office and out of office, and there's no difference between the office and me personally. And, well, that was his big issue. He never understood that, and that's why he continuously did things that were amount to abuses of power, like the things that his son Eric, I told you in the last minute of yesterday's show, was inadvertently confessing to, saying that he knew how the White House worked, and so the idea that Joe Biden didn't personally order the search of Mar-a-Lago was ludicrous because, of course, when his father was president, all search warrants of that sort were executed on the president's say-so, which is a huge abuse of power. But Eric doesn't really understand that. He doesn't theoretically grasp why it should be. Why would it be an abuse of power? The president can do whatever he wants. No, there's a theoretical difference between the personality occupying the office and the office's powers. You don't understand that? Then that's incredibly dangerous. We can't have you as president. But we did. And he threatens to do it again. Anyway, so Rolling Stone, their approach to this, in the weeks after the FBI's Mar-a-Lago raid, former President Donald Trump repeatedly made a simple sounding but extraordinary ask. He wanted his lawyers to get, quote, my documents back from federal law enforcement. Well, usually when federal law enforcement ends up with your documents, it's a tough road in getting them back into your possession until they've done what they need to do with them, at the very least. Trump wasn't merely referring to the alleged trove of attorney-client material that he insists was scooped up by the feds during the raid, and no evidence that there was any yet. Two people familiar with the matter tell Rolling Stone. The ex-president has been demanding that his team find a way to recover, quote, all of the official documents that Trump has long referred to as mine, including the highly sensitive and top secret ones. I need to grab like the Finding Nemo seagulls shrieking mine, mine, mine as a sound effect for this. Sources close to Trump agree with outside legal experts that such a sweeping legal maneuver would be a long shot at best. I hate to break it to the former president, but I do not think he is going to get all the top secret documents back, says one advisor. That ship has probably sailed, except that ship should be a prison barge. So if it's sailed anywhere, Trump better be on board. Further, several longtime Trump advisors say they want absolutely nothing to do with the now infamous boxes of documents, fearing that any knowledge of them could invite an unwanted knock on the door from the feds. Who would want any of that back? If it is what they say it is, keep them the hell away, a second advisor says. Still, the former president's legal team appears to be working to retrieve at least some of the papers seized during the August 8th federal search. In recent days, the Trump team, led by former federal prosecutor Evan Corcoran, has been quietly prepping additional legal arguments and strategies to try to pry back material that the feds removed from the ex-president's Florida abode and club, the sources say. Those measures include drafting a so-called Rule 41G motion, which allows a person aggrieved by an unlawful search and seizure of property to move for the property's return, according to the federal rules of criminal procedure. This would be a follow-up measure to the lawsuit filed Monday by Trump and his attorneys calling for the appointment of a special master to review the Mar-a-Lago materials for potentially privileged materials. It is unclear when the ex-president's lawyers plan to file a subsequent motion. which people close to Trump expect to be more narrowly tailored than what the former president apparently wants. The motion he already followed is so absolutely terrible that it's hard to contemplate him filing something even more aggressive and even more unlikely to succeed, says Ken White, a criminal defense attorney and former federal prosecutor. However, Trump is basically trying to litigate the ultimate issue in the case, which is whether he had the right to possess and keep those things, even after he was asked to return them. It's very unlikely that the court would accept that invitation to litigate that. He would have to prove that those things were illegally taken. And based on what we know, that is going to be very difficult to prove. He's going to have to make some very unusual legal arguments, which, if they're anything like the motion that was just filed, is going to be a very uphill climb. Okay, let me just clarify here. What White is saying is that Trump would have to prove that those things were illegally taken from him by the FBI. Difficult to do, especially given, of course, the fact that there was a warrant for their seizure. But you might be confused by that terminology because, after all, those things were illegally taken by Trump from the White House. And so there's a lot of illegal taking allegations going on. One's right, one's wrong, but there's a lot going on and a lot of people being accused. In the suit filed on Monday, seeking the appointment of a special master, Trump's attorneys signaled that a 41G motion could be forthcoming. A special master should, they argued, provide Trump's attorneys with a more detailed inventory of the items taken from Mar-a-Lago so that the president can properly evaluate and avail himself of the important protections of Rule 41. And I'm sure that's coming closer to trial as well. If they intend to make use of this evidence, he'll get a more detailed look at what the evidence actually is. The Trump legal team also asked Judge Eileen Cannon to appoint a special master with a fair-minded approach to providing defense counsel with information needed to support any 41G filing. And again, they've jumped from civil procedure rules to criminal procedure rules without there being an indictment. I don't know if that's, helpful to them or not, but I'm not a practitioner there. I couldn't tell you. Judge Cannon has yet to rule on these requests, but suggested she had some questions about it. In an order posted Tuesday afternoon, Cannon instructed Trump's attorneys to respond to questions about whether she even had jurisdiction to offer the kind of relief that they seek, whether granting their demands would affect Trump's ongoing litigation in another case seeking to unseal the Justice Department's evidence supporting the search warrant application. The potential Rule 41G motion comes amidst a series of odd and at times seemingly self-defeating moves by Trump allies seeking to defend the former president's conduct, not the least of which, again, I'm not certain because I'm not a practitioner certainly not in Florida or in federal courts or anywhere on criminal defense, but the idea of making a motion that invokes the federal rules of criminal procedure when your client hasn't been indicted, I'm not certain what the optics are there. I mean, to say that, we belong in criminal court and we anticipate ending up in criminal court by invoking the rules of criminal procedure before you're indicted just doesn't seem like a super smart approach to things, but maybe practitioners would say otherwise. Nip things in the bud or just, look, we all know I'm going to end up in criminal court anyway because I'm a criminal, but I at this point might be sticking to civil procedure more than criminal. Anyway, the former president's office claimed recently that Trump had issued a so-called standing order, right, the fake standing order to automatically declassify any materials taken from the West Wing in order to facilitate a flexible work schedule for the then president. Work schedule, come on. Thus far, no Trump administration veterans have come forward to attest to the existence of the legally questionable order, but it has prompted, as Rolling Stone reported last week, FBI agents to start questioning former members of Trump's National Security Council about whether they have any recollection of such an order. So now they all have to be witnesses, and a lot of people are having to talk now. And in a May 10th letter, Justice Department officials revealed that Trump took 15 boxes of classified materials to his Mar-a-Lago residence, with documents classified up to the level of top secret and including sensitive compartmented information and special access programs. that super special designation now, in addition to those documents seized by the FBI. Special access programs are among the most closely held secrets in the federal government, covering sensitive intelligence, operations, and technologies, and are strictly limited to smaller numbers of individuals on a need-to-know basis. The letter, posted by MAGA reporter John Solomon, appeared in an article by Solomon insinuating that President Biden had intervened in the efforts to retrieve the documents, but the correspondence sent to Solomon, who Trump designated as his liaison to the archives, confirmed that Trump had taken special access program materials. Probably not super smart to do.
Sup, fam? It's your boy Darwin, aka Darwin_Darko, aka the most reasonable man in America, aka KITM's senior black correspondent. You might remember me from such recordings as Spacemen vs. Space Cadets and We Need to Talk About Joe Biden. Today, I want to bring you good news about that thing you've been struggling with. Do you suffer from giving too much of a damn? Do you turn on the series of tubes and find yourself outraged at the particular way some news organization strung some sentences together only to realize, nope, this is not some fictional hellscape? Well, guess what? You no longer have to accept the life of giving too much of a damn. You can do something about it, because even you, yes you, can be a show contributor. Now I know what you're thinking. Hey, Mr. Most Reasonable Man in America, I'm not some professional podcast talking guy. Don't worry about it. Do you have a smartphone or some other electronic recording device? Well, that's all you need. You too can have a segment where you can read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Fair warning though, side effects may include general punditry, having opinions and hot takes, getting stuff off your chest, and hearing your own voice. If your recording lasts longer than 5 to 7 minutes, please consult kagrox@gmail.com. That's KAGROX@gmail.com.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Net Roots Radio. All right, let's see. I'm going to have to open up another article here that's coming across the transom. Just this new substitute for TweetDeck is a little clumsy in terms of opening up, just easily clicking through and clicking open stories and tweets that I want to save for later discussion. But okay. All right, we wrapped up with the Rolling Stone article, and I guess now we can move on to a couple of other items. I think maybe the next natural item in line, also back to the New York Times and back to Maggie Haberman. And I guess the fact that they are now having to interview, this is the segue point, now interviewing members of the National Security Council to ask them, do you remember anything about some sort of standing order of some questionable validity? But do you remember there ever being an attempt to claim that there was a standing order to declassify all materials removed from the West Wing and brought either to the residence or, for that matter, to Perva-Lago by the president so that he could skirt the law with respect to the storage and transportation of classified or highly sensitive materials? And they all say, nah, never heard of that one. They're also talking to other members of what were formerly the Trump Inner Circle about something else. Not the FBI, but the House January 6th committee, asking some questions. What's going on? The January 6th panel questioning Trump cabinet members on 25th Amendment talks. This is what I guess is driving the other weird story that's been on sort of the outskirts of the swirling universe of Trump stories for a while, and I haven't made mention that he's renewing his feud with Mitch McConnell over, well, various things, but via attacks on Elaine Chao, McConnell's wife and Trump's transportation secretary, whom everybody kind of had one eye on as a possible avenue of corruption, given her vast wealth and connections with the transportation networks of China. But somehow that didn't bother Donald Trump for various reasons. Of course, he was trying to get on the good side of Mitch McConnell to get his legislation passed, but then trying to keep his street cred by attacking McConnell all the time. Anyway, we'll get back to what's going on there after we read through this, I think, more important development. And this will, I think, provide a segue to that, too. Did I even store any? I don't know if I stored any stories about his latest attacks on Chow. I think so. Anyway, the House Select Committee has used the August congressional recess to delve into discussions inside former President Donald Trump's cabinet about removing him from office after the riot. I think a good line of questioning and a good use of their time during the recess as well. You know, it's not always just a vacation, like it is, say, for Rick Scott, who apparently has spent a good portion of the break on apparently on a luxury yacht in Europe somewhere. And just in case you were thinking he was a salt of the earth kind of a guy, he's not. I don't know why you would ever think that about him. He's a billionaire who stole all of his money from the Medicare system. But anyway, I digress. Luke Broadwater and Maggie Haberman teamed up for this piece in the New York Times. The House Select Committee, scrutinizing the January 6th attack, has used the August congressional recess to gather more evidence as it prepares to resume public hearings next month. Don't forget about that. Dispatching investigators to Europe and digging deeper into discussions by former President Donald Trump's cabinet about after the riot about removing him from office via the 25th Amendment, of course. The panel has been holding closed-door interviews with senior Trump administration officials in an effort to uncover more about the period between January 6th, 2021, when, of course, a mob of Mr. Trump's supporters attacked Congress, and January 20th, when President Biden was sworn in, including talks about invoking the 25th Amendment. On Tuesday, the panel interviewed Robert O'Brien, Mr. Trump's former national security advisor, one of about 18 that he had, for several hours, according to two people familiar with the committee's work. Investigators asked Mr. O'Brien about discussions inside the cabinet about whether to invoke the 25th Amendment to remove Mr. Trump from office, about whether he considered resigning, and about the access that Mike Lindell, the MyPillow CEO and election conspiracy theorist, had to Mr. Trump, according to a person familiar with the matter. Mr. O'Brien's former deputy, Matthew Pottinger, testified before the committee last month publicly and described how he felt compelled to resign after the events of that day. Mr. O'Brien's participation with the committee was reported earlier by NBC News. He is the latest in a series of senior Trump officials to testify in recent weeks. The panel interviewed Elaine Chao, the former transportation secretary, earlier this month. Ms. Chao, who is married to Senator Mitch McConnell, Republican of Kentucky, in case you'd forgotten, and the minority leader, also resigned after the violence on January 6th. The committee's investigators have also taken testimony privately from Mike Pompeo, the former Secretary of State, about the former president's state of mind around the time of the attack and his fitness for office. They also questioned him about discussions that he reportedly had with Steven Mnuchin, the Treasury Secretary, about the possibility of invoking the 25th Amendment after the attack. Mr. Pompeo was evasive in response to the committee's questioning, according to a person familiar with this interview. Mr. Pompeo, who had previously strenuously denied any such discussions, offered a more muted recounting this week. He told Fox News recently that the panel was chasing witches. The panel has also sought information from Betsy DeVos, Mr. Trump's education secretary, who has said she raised with Vice President Mike Pence whether the cabinet should consider the 25th Amendment. We can anticipate a few more hearings, specifically on the time period after January 6th. Representative Pete Aguilar, Democrat of California and a member of the committee, told Cap Radio in Sacramento in a recent interview, adding that conversations about the 25th Amendment were of interest. The committee has also taken its investigation overseas. Committee staff investigators traveled to Copenhagen. It's Copenhagen to you and me, but Copenhagen, to many others, but including, I guess, is that the actual Danish pronunciation? I'd have to work on my Danish pronunciation to get that right. Anyway, they went to Copenhagen last week to review documentary footage. I don't know how you interview documentary footage. That would be difficult, but review it, that I understand. What footage? I guess it was one of the the various documentarians who were hired and had agreements to film the key players in Trump world and January 6th world, despite the fact that that would be eventually used as evidence against them. Well, now it is going to be. They traveled to Copenhagen to review documentary footage of the political operative and Trump confidant Roger Stone, according to a person familiar with the matter. I'd like to make a trip there for that purpose. That'd be fun. The committee's investigators also viewed video footage, or well, not also, this is what they did. They viewed video footage recorded as Danish filmmakers tracked Mr. Stone after the 2020 election, including the day of January 6th, according to a person familiar with their work. The filmmakers have a 170-hour cache of footage of Mr. Stone's activities. Mr. Stone appeared before the committee for a deposition in December and invoked his Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination in response to each of the panel's questions. While the committee investigators may find the documentary film footage entertaining, they will find no evidence of wrongdoing, Mr. Stone said in a statement on Tuesday, but that's because he's the defendant in this, and of course he's going to say that. It's probably wrong. Stone promoted his attendance at the rallies on January 5th and 6th, solicited support to pay for security through the website stopthesteal.org, and used members of the Oath Keepers militia as personal security guards while he was in Washington. At least 2 of these members have been indicted on charges that they were involved in the Capitol attack. He has denied involvement in the violence of January 6th. Lawmakers are also using the August recess to prepare a preliminary report of their findings, tentatively scheduled to be released in the fall. So, something to keep an eye on there as well. Now, let's see. Do I have anything specifically about the Elaine Chao thing? I feel like I certainly saw those things go by. The question is, here we are. Something from The Hill, which may or may not be the only thing I put aside here, but let's dive into that and see what's going on here. This article from just the other day, the 21st, Trump accuses, quote, crazy former Transportation Secretary Elaine Chao of trying to, quote, get rich on China. Oh no, not that. Well, as you know, every Republican accusation is a confession, even when the accusation is leveled against other Republicans. It still works. So what's going on? Former President Trump on Saturday called his former Transportation Secretary Elaine Chao crazy and accused her and her family of working to get rich on China. Trump's attack came in a Truth Social post knocking Chao's husband, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, for saying the GOP might face a tight race to flip the Senate, in part due to, quote, candidate quality. In other words, of course, they're Todd Akening themselves, possibly right out of a anticipated majority, and that's largely due to Trump and his idiotic insistence on endorsing the craziest candidates everywhere. I mean, I like it as far as, I mean, if we're going to get if he has to speak, I suppose it's going to be that. We can't control what he says. And although I never loved the gambit of, hooray, the candidate for the other side is as crazy as possible, and so therefore people will totally recognize that and stay away from them. I don't trust that very much, but okay. Anyway, yeah, it's interesting that he chose, though, I mean, I guess what's underlying all of this, I hope they mention it in the article, is that he must have gotten wind that Elaine Chao was being called to testify by the January 6th committee, and that's why he's bothering with the attack on her now, as opposed to simply responding to Mitch McConnell's fretting that he may not become majority leader again. Let's see. So Trump's attack came in a Truth Social post knocking McConnell for saying that basically Trump might cost them a chance at the majority. Why do Republican senators allow a broken down hack politician, Mitch McConnell, to openly disparage hardworking Republican candidates for the United States Senate? Trump wrote, "This is such an affront to honor and to leadership. He should spend more time and money helping them get elected and less time helping his crazy wife and family get rich on China." Which, you know, that's the job for the Trump family to be getting rich on China. Get out of our way. More for us. Maybe that's it. The Hill has reached out to Chow and McConnell for comment. I'm sure they got no response from that. Chow's father founded the Chinese shipping company Foremost Group, and her sister is the CEO. Though Chow has no formal ties to the business, she and McConnell both faced questions over her potential conflicts of interest during her time in the White House and whether she used government resources to support her family's business. Appointed by Trump in 2017, Chow reportedly didn't disclose her family's affiliation with Foremost Group during her confirmation hearing. How could that have been hidden? Everybody should have known about that. A key point of concern was Chow's continued media appearances with her father, even after assuming office, which her team reportedly countered, were opportunities to share her story as the first Chinese-American and Asian-American woman to hold a cabinet position. You see? Perfectly innocent. Chow split her support when her husband and boss began feuding during Trump's time in office, reportedly saying, "I stand by my man." Both of them. Wow, I don't think I remember that actually being said. That's pretty remarkable. And, all right, so there you go. It's not, it's Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve, or possibly Adam and Steve and Eve in this situation. I like that. I stand by my man. Which one? Both of them. That's a great answer. Wow. Chow resigned after the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol. After her resignation, the Justice Department declined to pursue an ethics probe into how she used her position. Not certain why they would do that, and whether they have the opportunity to change their mind on that. Trump has lambasted McConnell as disloyal, though the minority leader has said he'd back the former president in 2024 if Trump were to win the Republican presidential nomination. I mean, Trump's making great headway among senators whose wives he attacks. It appears to be a great tactic. Ted Cruz can't stop licking his boots, despite the fact that he attacked Ted Cruz's wife. And, of course, Ted Cruz made noises about, if you attack my wife and my family, you better look out. I'm going to come after you, and yada, yada. And, of course, then he turned into a total bootlicker. And I guess maybe he's thinking, well, maybe the same will happen for McConnell. I'll attack his wife, and then he'll fall in line. McConnell has been managing midterm expectations in recent weeks, saying on Thursday that Republicans have a better chance of flipping the House than the Senate. I think there's probably a greater likelihood the House flips than the Senate. Senate races are just different. They're statewide. Candidate quality has a lot to do with the outcome, he said. His comments came after a number of Trump-backed candidates won the GOP nomination in key battleground states such as Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Georgia. So, not much detail, and nothing that connects the attacks on Chow to her testifying to the January 6th committee, but I think that's probably the most likely and most logical explanation for the interest. Okay. In other news, elsewhere, worthy of sharing, there's, of course, far too much to get to all of it, but we do have the balance of the week left, and we'll give it a shot, trying to do the show tomorrow and have faith that my son can actually get out the door on time and make the bus. And I guess we can't really establish the precedent just now that you can interrupt the show by potentially being late for the bus, because that's going to happen all year, and then we're going to have to change the time of the show. So I don't think that can really be sustainable, but we'll find out. Anyway, let's see. Here's something new from developments yesterday. The Daily Beast is where we'll turn for this news. A jury has decided that fanatics really did want to kidnap the Michigan governor after all. And the story you were hearing in the news was true all along. The feds scored a win in one of the scariest extremist plots of the 2020 election cycle just months before Gretchen Whitmer seeks a second term. Pilar Melendez reports for the Daily Beast here. Two men accused of conspiring to kidnap Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer were found guilty on Tuesday, capping one of the most disturbing stories about far-right extremism to emerge in the surreal 2020 election cycle. Adam Fox was found guilty of kidnapping conspiracy and conspiracy to use a weapon of mass destruction. Wow. Barry Croft Jr. was convicted of the same charges and also possession of an unregistered destructive device. The convictions came 4 months after a jury was deadlocked on charges against Fox and Croft, which led prosecutors to try their case all over again. No deadlock this time. Fox and Croft now face up to life in prison. The guilty verdict came after 8 hours of deliberation, ending one chapter in a case that was marred by misconduct allegations against some of the FBI agents involved, and even included a double agent informant that the feds effectively disavowed. In April, a Michigan jury acquitted 2 of Croft and Fox's co-defendants, Daniel Harris and Brandon Caserta, of several charges after 5 days of deliberation. The shocking result came after a lengthy trial in which prosecutors alleged the group staged a depraved scheme born out of anti-government anger at the Democratic leaders' COVID-19 restrictions. 2 other alleged conspirators, Ty Garbin and Caleb Franks, previously pleaded guilty to federal kidnapping conspiracy and testified on behalf of the government in both trials. 10 other individuals accused in the plot are still facing charges. I want to thank the prosecutors and law enforcement officers for their hard work and my family, friends, and staff for their support, Whitmer said in a statement after the verdict. Today's verdicts prove that violence and threats have no place in our politics. Well, we wish. And those who seek to divide us will be held accountable. We wish for that too. They will not succeed. We got these 2 at least. Prosecutors say the group, which included militia members and self-described patriots, spent months in 2020 hatching the violent plan after Whitmer locked down the state in an effort to mitigate the pandemic. The plot allegedly included plans to kidnap Whitmer, detonate a bridge to prevent cops from rescuing her, actually probably detonate explosives on a bridge, yes, and then leave her stranded on a boat in the middle of Lake Michigan. Okay. Or rather, it says, and even leave her stranded on a boat in the middle of Lake Michigan, as opposed to just murdering her outright, which I think was also in the offing. Don't forget the most important thing. These defendants were outside a woman's house in the middle of the night with night vision goggles and guns and a plan to kidnap her. And they made a bomb. That's real enough, isn't it? Assistant U.S. Attorney Niels Kessler said in closing arguments on Monday, they didn't want to just kidnap her, they wanted to execute her. Fox, whom prosecutors described as one of the plot's ringleaders, and Croft were said to be affiliated with the 3%er far-right anti-government movement. The group name is a reference to the false notion that only a tiny fraction of residents of the 13 colonies fought in the American Revolution. Several current or former adherents to the bogus worldview were charged with conspiracy over the January 6, 2021 riot at the U.S. Capitol. Throughout both trials, defense attorneys for the 2 men say they were entrapped by an FBI informant, coaxed into participating in a plot they otherwise would never have become involved in. The FBI turned up the heat in early June by putting big talkers together at meetings, Fox's lawyer Christopher Gibbons said during closing statements on Monday. Whitmer is seeking a second term this fall against Tudor Dixon, a Republican who won an endorsement from Trump and shouldn't find yourself alone with her in an elevator because, I don't know, I'm making that up, but I like to call her Tudor Dixon because the name is ridiculous and it's always fun to do that sort of thing. It is. It's always fun. Never fails. All right, let's see other stories that deserve sharing. Let's do this one. Ian Millhiser picked up on this one and tweeted the other day. But for some reason the tweet no longer exists. That's unusual. So he deleted the tweet. What he had said, and we'll see, maybe it doesn't hold up. He had tweeted, "This is extraordinary. Although I fear that the entire point of Republican justices' major questions doctrine is to give them veto power over any regulation, regardless of what the law actually says." What's he talking about? Well, there's this story, which I guess we'll read, and then we'll have to spend some time off the air trying to determine what made Ian Millhiser delete this tweet, although maybe it was just a typo and he reissued it later on. We'll go find out. A New York Times piece. Democrats designed the climate law to be a game changer, right? The climate portions of the Inflation Reduction Act. Here's how. Well, guess what? In a first, the measure legally defines greenhouse gases as pollution. That will make new regulations much tougher to challenge in court. The idea here is that, and the initial claim, that maybe this is what Millhiser was backing off of, was that Democrats had found a way to sneak language into this reconciliation bill that would counter the recent ruling from the lunatic conservative Supreme Court that threatened, all manner of federal regulations by declaring this new major questions doctrine and outlawing or disallowing the Environmental Protection Agency from promulgating regulations that would cut back on greenhouse gas emissions and other things related to combating climate change as implicating this new fake major questions doctrine, and that they tried to undo part of it anyway, legislatively, and did so quietly and without much fanfare. Lisa Friedman reports for this piece from Monday, the 22nd, when the Supreme Court restricted the ability of the Environmental Protection Agency to fight climate change this year. The reason it gave was that Congress had never granted the agency the broad authority to shift America away from burning fossil fuels. Now it has. Throughout the landmark climate law passed this month is language written specifically to address the Supreme Court's justification for reining in the EPA, a ruling that was one of the court's most consequential of the term. The new law amends the Clean Air Act, the country's bedrock air quality legislation, to define the carbon dioxide produced by the burning of fossil fuels as an air pollutant. That language, according to legal experts as well as Democrats who worked it into the legislation, explicitly gives the EPA the authority to regulate greenhouse gases and to use its power to push the adoption of wind, solar, and other renewable energy sources. I like it. The language, we think, makes pretty clear that greenhouse gases are pollutants under the Clean Air Act, said Senator Tom Carper, a Delaware Democrat who led the movement to revise the law. With the new law, he added, there are no ifs, ands, or buts. Well, we'll see. That Congress has told federal agencies to tackle carbon dioxide, methane, and other heat-trapping emissions from power plants, automobiles, and oil wells. This month, in the hours before the bill passed the Senate, Republicans waged a last-minute, mostly unsuccessful pre-dawn battle to remove the language from the legislation. Later that day, the Senate approved the climate and tax bill by a vote of 51-50 along party lines, with Vice President Kamala Harris casting the tie-breaking vote. Thank you, Kamala Harris. Republicans objected to the language and to the fact that it appeared in a budget bill, a category of legislation focused on government spending and revenue. It's buried in there, Senator Ted Cruz, Republican of Texas, said on Fox Business Network ahead of the Senate vote. The Democrats are trying to overturn the Supreme Court's West Virginia versus EPA victory. Yes, they are. Referring to the ruling, of course, that curbed the EPA's ability to tackle global warming, Cruz did not respond to requests for comment to discuss his opposition. Conservative organizations that have challenged the Environmental Protection Agency's authority in the past said the new law would not stop future lawsuits. They'll always file those. Robert Henneke, executive director of Texas Public Policy Foundation, a conservative nonprofit group, said sneaking in this verbiage into the new law is probably just going to set up future regulatory fights. Well, they'll certainly fight. The question is whether they'll lose. Legal experts, on the other hand, said those fights would almost certainly be harder to win. Jody Freeman, a professor at Harvard Law School and an expert on the Clean Air Act, said the language cemented EPA's authority and would be a powerful disincentive to new lawsuits. I don't know if I agree with that. The new law includes about $370 billion, of course, over 10 years to expand the use of electric vehicles, jumpstart renewable energy, such as solar and wind, and develop new energy sources like clean hydrogen. It's the largest investment in climate change solutions in U.S. history and is expected to help cut emissions by about 40% below 2005 levels by the end of the decade. And that's all good news by itself. The real question, and the article is too long for us to finish here today, but the real question is whether or not traditional legal analysis serves us very well. I mean, don't get me wrong. It was absolutely the right thing to do to try and do this. But the idea that Republicans won't sue over anything is probably just not true. They'll absolutely file suit anyway and try and challenge us. And then the question of whether or not traditional legal analysis, which would lead us to say, well, okay, to the extent that the major questions doctrine and the decision that was they based this West Virginia case on swing on whether or not they honestly believe, among the justices of the Supreme Court, that the Congress explicitly authorized this sort of rulemaking. If that's really and truly what they were doing, and they really and truly believe that Congress, if it did specifically authorize this sort of rulemaking, would be on solid ground and they would have to uphold this stuff despite their invention of this major questions doctrine, then fine. It will be harder. But if you believe instead that this was an outcome-oriented bill, a predetermined outcome, they wanted to strike down these EPA regulations, and they came up with an explanation that allowed them to do it, which is what they did. The major questions doctrine isn't a thing. They invented it in order to defeat these regulations. Won't they just invent something else? Or will this be the sort of case where they finally eventually say, we just don't have to give you a reason, we just don't like it, and we're the Supreme Court and you can't appeal from us? We'll find out, I guess, fairly quickly about that.
From networksradio.com, you have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
Anyway, my best guess is that they'll just simply try to invent something else because they're not quite ready to simply say, because we said so. Maybe when they get a 7-2 majority, they'll be able to do that. Anyway, time now for Justice Putnam to join you with the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. His turn to make baseless guesses about what the future holds. Next.